You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
We got Charles on the line. He had a question for us. Charles, you there?
Well, yeah, and that was really interesting. What I was wondering is, does this decision leave it open for big corporations or anyone to affiliate themselves with a religion and hire their persons that are workers and call them ministers and bypass everything, get the tax breaks, not give you anything? Is that a possibility for a future now with this ruling?
Well, I mean, they don't even have the ruling the way it stands. They don't even have to affiliate with a religion anymore.
Is that?
I mean, look at Hobby Lobby. Look at what Hobby Lobby has done.
That's about the birth control, and with the birth control, my understanding is that any publicly traded, any corporate executive that just says they've got a moral conviction about birth control, they're not going to have to fund it, which I think is lunacy. But the ministerial exception, I believe that you do have to be some sort of religiously affiliated. Like, I don't reckon that Walmart can just say, "Oh, we're a Christian organization now," and make their tellers, I don't reckon you can do that.
Part of the tax exempt is going nonprofit with a 501c, whatever, 3, 4, or 5, what have you. So that, they could. I mean, anybody can apply for the nonprofit, but they're not going to be able to pay their CEOs billions of dollars.
What about proving that you are actually, maybe you wanted to form a new religious?
That's happened
a new
quite
church
a bit.
Or something. That could be open for just receiving all those things and not really having a belief pattern that necessarily conform to.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
a possibility, but you do. There are certain processes like we have incorporated the show, and we're working on getting a nonprofit status. I do paperwork for the local labor council, and so we have to do paperwork to secure our nonprofit status and stuff. And so, there's certain things that you have to do.
What he's specifically asking about is the religion aspect, and what you've seen early on before a lot of the medical marijuana laws come into place. You've seen a lot of people forming religions around that and using that to circumvent federal law with the marijuana laws. You've seen the Native Americans that consistently use peyote as a religious practice out in the West.
As a ruling that could make for circumventing or gaining profit by such a move, and also not having to follow civil liberties laws.
Yeah, I mean that's a possibility. I guess I haven't thought much about that, but my main concern has definitely been with people in these Catholic schools, for instance. Charles, thanks for calling. We appreciate your call. But that's been a lot of my concern, because there are so many people in these Catholic schools or these extracurricular church organizations that are employed to do 99% secular functions. They are not a minister. No one in their right mind reckons that these people are ministers. And this ministerial exception has been expanded to teachers, and it does open the door. How many other people are you going to be able to carve out? And you're going to be able, these folks, the boss is going to make more money. More money is going to go to the people at the top. And so that's my worry. Of course, there could.
What bothers me more than anything is the fact that the left is very outspoken on disobeying laws that they do not agree with, and I have no problem with that. Right. What bothers me more than anything is these people on the right that talk about the left so bad about, oh, look at all of this they're doing. They're ignoring laws, but yet they're going in. And they constantly talk about activist judges. The left wants activist judges. And what are they doing? This is exactly why do you think Trump has said we've got to have more Supreme Court nominees? It's for activist judges.
Yeah, and that's an important point. generally speaking, like, folks on the left are not like couching their arguments in like, oh, we got to make sure we follow the Constitution. It's like, no, we want to make sure that we do good things, and
exactly.
and sometimes good things comport with the law, and sometimes it doesn't. And so, like, I'm just not terribly concerned with making sure like the law is like, it's not some like ultimate good. I think that there's a good in procedural justice and stuff like that, and I think it's good that to maintain the rule of law, but like that's not my highest order. For people that are like these supposedly textualist originalist judges, like that is their highest order. Like, I'm just calling balls and strikes. I'm not don't believe this way or that way. I'm just calling balls and strikes, and that's all that I care about is balls and strikes, balls and strikes, balls and strikes. And that's obviously not what they are doing. They're I mean, it's just, and it, folks that are telling you that's they either just, they haven't like looked into it, or they're lying to you, or it's just they are activist judges trying to make sure that their
political
pet projects get pushed through. But again, like I said, when I saw that comment about like, we'll take it up with SCOTUS or take it up with whoever, like you have not been listening to the show for very long.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
We are like, it would be better that
the one thing that we've lost, or I'll say this, not the one thing that we've lost, that's probably a bad term, but the one thing that I've recognized over 40 years of voting every time the polls are open, of being politically active, of going out donating to candidates that I support, is it has made zero difference in my life. Zero difference in my life. I'm not making any more money than I was because of politicians. I don't have better health care than I did because of politicians. If you believe that a politician is going to have a positive impact on your life, then you've bought the lie. Yeah. You have bought the lie that they're selling you.
I mean, I don't know that I would be that radical. I think that there are some things that some politicians have done that have been better than not. But the things that they have done have been pushed by people at the bottom, pushed by movements like Hometown Action, pushed by labor unions, and they've like basically caved to pressure that these outside movements have put on them. But like that is what we like. We don't, whatever, a politician may be better or worse, and that's fine, and I think you should vote, and like I'm not shy about how I vote, but like this show is not about that. This show is about taking the power that you have and that you can have with yourself and your fellow workers and using that power, because so many people are not using the power that they have. They are letting themselves be inculcated into this individualist, it's all about me, I ain't got to worry about nobody else, and worrying about anybody else is not going to help me, and that's just not true. When you work together, when you work in solidarity, when you do collective action, these are the things that make the difference in people's lives, and that's the thing that we want to communicate. We want to communicate that your life will be better if you organize, you form a union, and you
negotiate collectively.
Negotiate collectively. You win these gains for yourself at the bargaining table. On the other, write your contract with your boss. This is the point of the show.
And that's not to say, let me clarify. And what you said was a good point. That's not to say that I don't believe politicians can't have a negative impact on your life or a positive impact on your life. A lot of the laws that are the legislation that's pushed out does have a negative or positive impact on your life. But the fact of the matter is the bread and butter issues of pay, of health care, of sick pay, of vacation, all of these bread and butter issues that actually have an effect on your family, of whether you can go to Gulf Shores every year, of whether you can take a vacation every year, those are the issues that we are concerned about. Not not some willy-nilly bull crap that the politicians want to tell you.
Right. This is the Valley Labor Report. We've got one more segment. Stay tuned. You're here with Jacob Morrison and David Story. If you want to talk to us, 1-866-494-9866 is the... Good morning, Tennessee Valley. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host David Story, and we have been talking about those Supreme Court rulings, and we used those. We talked about those because we wanted to, there's at least one Catholic school in the area, and we wanted to, one, alert people to, like, the problems that they could be facing here in the future. Two, this is, like, an important topic that a lot of people are talking about. And three, and most importantly, we wanted to use that as another jumping off point to hit the point that we've been hitting every week. That's why we talked about those Supreme Court rulings, because we wanted to use that as another illustration, another supporting argument for why folks should not be relying on the government to supply them with their needs, to make sure that their civil rights are protected, to make sure that they have the health care that they need. They need to be organizing themselves, forming unions, negotiating their contracts themselves collectively with the boss. And so we wanted, this was a good headline that a lot of people were talking about that we thought that we could use to illustrate that point once again. So that's why we were talking about that. And on the line, we've got Scott. Scott, what you got for us?
Hey, gentlemen, good morning. This is my first time listening on your program. I happen to be driving this morning and dialed into it. So,
welcome. About
the Supreme Court rulings this week, real quick, I know we only got about 5 or 6 minutes left in the session. The laws are in place, I believe, to cover things in a general way. But life is complex. Situations are very complicated. And when you start bringing in unique personalities and unique situations, sometimes laws may not be specific enough to cover a situation. In this case, with the Supreme Court ruling about religious freedom, I think it's not conservatives and the constitutionalists are trying to be hypocrites. I think instead they see where two competing laws are conflicting or seem to conflict in a very complicated and complex situation. So we had the Bill of Rights, which guarantees the religious freedom, and then we have laws that take that religious freedom and push them into situations and into general understandings. And then we have the civil rights laws that are also general enough that we still have complex and complicated situations that the civil rights laws do not specifically address. So in this case, it's not that I believe the conservatives and constitutionalists are being hypocrites. Instead, we're trying to get a judge to help us understand which the two laws takes precedence. In this case, it was not a partisan agreement. It was a bipartisan ruling, 7-2. So that's a little bit more partisan and less specific to a Democrat versus Republican, left versus right, conservative versus liberal. And that's my comments.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. You said you've been picking it up this morning. I don't know if you was listening earlier, but the point that I was trying to make earlier is the birth control, contraceptives, things like that are not necessarily used for birth control or for contraceptives. As with my daughters going through teenage years, they had to have these hormones that's in the birth controls or contraceptives to offset some of the medical conditions they had with endometriosis and things like that helped them. And what has happened now is the Catholic Church is going to be able to cut these benefits out of people that may actually need them. And that's not to say that they won't be able to get them. That's to say that they're going to have to pay full price for them, and they're not going to be able to get them underneath their health insurance plan. And what we're saying is, regardless of what the Supreme Court does, get in there and negotiate. Form a union in your area, in your workplace. Get in there and negotiate these benefits so you can take those back and quit relying on the government to decide for you and your employer. Because at the end of the day, I think constitutionalists, right wing, can agree that we don't want the government determining how our businesses work. We don't want I hear it all the time. I listen to WVNN regularly. We don't want the government telling us what we can do with our individual liberties, individual rights. So I think it is hypocritical. I think it's very hypocritical.
And you know,
So my whole point was just taking exception to the idea that the constitutionalists are seem to be hypocritical, and that's my whole point I was trying to make.
Sure.
Thanks for calling, Scott.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it. And, you know, that's a reasonable point to make that, you know, of course, sometimes you're going to have laws that conflict, and so you're going to have to decide where, what law supersedes another. And in this case, they decided that the religious freedom for quote unquote religious organizations to define minister in however beyond imagination is more important than the civil rights of the workers,
workers' rights.
Yeah,
just
and that
workers'
was
rights.
and what that's what the decision ultimately came down to. The Supreme Court, and like you said, it was a 7-2 ruling. They believed that it was more important for religious freedom that these quote religious organizations be able to define minister in whatever the heck kind of way they want than these workers' civil rights are.
And a minister is a minister. Come on now. We all know what a minister is.
Yeah, we know. I mean, we know what a minister
is. To
call
a secretary that does 3 hours of religious work, or a teacher 3 hours of religious studies, a minister, is sickening. They're employees.
Right. And you know, I mean, I reckon that their civil rights are more important than the ability to define minister as whatever you want. And so that's where we come down on it. I disagree with the Supreme Court on that. I think that those civil rights are more important than the ability to define minister however you want. I think that there is a good common sense definition of minister, and being a teacher who does 3 hours of church history a week is not a minister. And I reckon anybody in the audience would agree with me, but for this Supreme Court ruling. But again, we wanted to talk about this to say that instead of relying on the government to supply your civil rights for you, that you should organize, you should form a union and take your civil rights. Don't hope that they are bequeathed to you by these enlightened liberals in D.C. Just take them. Just take them. You have the power to do that, and you should do that. And so that's what we want to get across every week. That's what we hope that we're doing every week.
When you start negotiating on your own, then you don't have to. You no longer have to worry about the government taking care of you, or the government providing you with benefits, or the government seeing these rulings.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in, folks. We appreciate your time today. If you want to see what we're up to throughout the week, get our snide quips about the news of the day, then you should follow us on social media. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/Valley Labor Report. We're on Twitter at Labor Reporters. I'm on Twitter at Jacob M_AL. David is on Twitter at Radical Unionist. That's spelled RADICL Unionist. If you missed part of the show and want to go back and watch it later, you can search YouTube for The Valley Labor Report and subscribe to our channel. You can go back and watch the full show there, and we also clip segments throughout the week. And if you appreciate our work and want to help keep us on the air, consider throwing us a couple dollars a month on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report.